Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. Hope you're all ready to ring in 2025 in style.
Absolutely.
But before we get to the celebrations, we got a deep dive to do, a question to tackle. It's one that I think's been on a lot of people's minds forever.
Intriguing.
How do you tell, a true visionary
Right.
from just a smooth-talking con artist?
Yeah.
Especially these days, So many big personalities, so many bold claims.
Definitely. History's full of them, captivating everyone with charisma and promises then. Leaving a trail of, well, shattered dreams.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of leads us perfectly into today's subject.
Okay, let's hear it.
You guys asked us to take a look at Jeffrey Skilling.
Enron.
The Enron guy, mastermind behind the whole thing, the rise, the fall, all of it. Was he a brilliant innovator, pushing the boundaries of energy?
Or a cunning manipulator.
Building an empire on, deception?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one.
We've dug up court documents, articles about both Enron and Skilling himself, even a review of the smartest guys in the room to get a sense of, how others saw him.
Interesting.
It's not just about the financial world either. This is about understanding that line, between ambition and deception.
For sure.
So rewind back to the beginning.
Okay.
1985, Enron gets its start, kinda. It was a merger of two natural gas pipeline companies, InterNorth and Houston Natural Gas. Seems pretty straightforward at first.
Maybe on the surface. But don't forget, this was massive upheaval in the energy market. Deregulation was the buzzword. Opportunities and a whole lot of uncertainty. Enron's leaders, though, they saw a chance.
To break free.
To break free! They wanted something much bigger than the traditional utility model.
And they weren't messing around with that image either.
Yeah.
Spent over $100,000 just to come up with the name Enron.
Wow.
Rebranding themselves, ditching that old InterNorth name. Bold statement, right?
Oh, yeah. Signaled ambition for sure. But gotta point out, even with the fancy new name, they were carrying some baggage. Financially, I mean. That Houston natural gas merger.
Right.
Maybe an early clue that things weren't all sunshine and roses.
Interesting. But for a while, man, they seemed unstoppable. Pipelines were just the start. They were diving into energy trading, international markets, even broadband.
The pioneers, right?
Innovators.
Yeah.
Model of a modern energy company. That's what everyone was saying.
Enter Jeffrey Skilling. 1990, he joins Enron. Already a big deal. Harvard MBA, consultant at McKinsey. He climbs the ladder fast.
And brings more than just business smarts, right?
Right. A very specific philosophy, some might even say controversial.
The selfish gene.
That's the one. Richard Dawkins, evolutionary biology. But Skilling, he zeroed in on this idea of self-interest as the main motivator for people. Not just theory for him either. It shaped everything he did at Enron, management especially.
Like that rank and yang thing.
Exactly. Pitting employees against each other, bottom performers shown the door. Brutal system.
Sounds rough. What does that do to the company's culture?
Intensity, oh yeah. Competition, off the charts. Skilling said it was meritocracy, everyone pushing to their absolute best.
Okay.
But you gotta wonder, though, what about ethics in that environment?
Right.
Collaboration. What happens when everyone's looking over their shoulder constantly, worried about being next?
Yeah, it's like that kind of pressure cooker. Maybe cutting corners or looking the other way starts to feel normal.
Maybe. Especially if you really believe everyone's just out for themselves anyway.
Right, like Skilling did.
Exactly. And all this was happening while they were pushing hard into California, that energy market, newly deregulated, ripe for the taking.
And Skilling, he was the face of it all. Charisma, that persuasive way of talking,
Right.
painting a picture of Enron revolutionizing the energy industry.
People bought it, investors especially.
But now looking back,
Yeah.
was that real leadership? Or was it all calculated manipulation? Were those big speeches about the future just hiding something darker?
That's where grifter, or gifted, gets really interesting.
It does. Because it's not enough to just hear what he said, right? You got to look at what he actually did. What were the results for Enron, for the whole energy landscape?
Exactly.
And speaking of actions, there's that one thing that raised eyebrows even back when Enron was on top. Mark-to-market accounting.
Yes.
What exactly is that, and why was it so controversial?
Well, think of it this way. Enron could book future profits as if they were already earned today, just based on their own projections. Their guess about how their investments would perform. It made their financial statements look amazing, in the short term.
But that's got to be risky. What if the projections are wrong?
Bingo. That's the danger. Huge potential for manipulation. inflate those earnings, hide what was really going on. Critics were saying it gave them too much power to paint a rosy picture, even if the reality wasn't so stable.
And, well, given what happened to Enron, those concerns seem more than justified.
Indeed. But before we get to that dramatic downfall, let's dig a little deeper into Skilling himself, the management style, the culture he created within Enron.
Yeah, okay. What were the hallmarks of his approach? How did it all contribute, not just to the successes, but also ultimately to that big crash?
Right. Let's see. Skilling, he was relentless, driven, sharp as a tack. And he believed in his vision, no question. He built a team of, like-minded people, top business schools, consulting firms, all brilliant, all sharing that ambition, that appetite for risk.
So intelligence and drive were like the top prizes.
You got it.
But was there any space for, disagreeing? Different opinions?
That's the thing, that rank and yank system. Yeah, it was supposed to be about meritocracy, but it also made people scared to speak up.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Constant evaluation, comparison. Not just about performance either, but also about, fitting into Skilling's vision.
So it's like even if you had a good idea, a different way of doing things, you might just keep quiet.
Exactly.
Just to stay safe.
Don't want to rock the boat. Who dared to challenge Skilling? Not many.
And those who did?
Sidelined, pushed out. Skilling, not known for taking criticism well, question his methods. Weakness, disloyalty.
It all circles back to that selfish gene idea, doesn't it? If everyone's just looking out for number one,
right?
Doesn't that breed a culture of, distrust, suspicion?
It can. And at Enron, it seems like that's what happened. That philosophy plus the intense pressure, it's like the perfect recipe for, blurring the lines.
Ethical lines?
Ethical lines, short-term gains, personal climb to the top. That's what mattered, even if it meant bending the rules, looking the other way.
It's a classic case of how a leader, their beliefs, their values, it just trickles down, shapes the whole organization, how people act.
Absolutely. It wasn't just greed, though. It was the system.
Yeah.
Skilling built it to reward those who followed his way, punish those who didn't. It's like this cycle feeding itself, leading to, what happened.
Deception, taking huge risks.
And all this was happening while they were diving headfirst into California, that deregulated energy market. How did that play into their strategy, and was it part of their downfall?
Yeah, good point. Deregulation, it was supposed to make things more competitive, right?
Right. But it also made things a lot more complex. Enron, with their trading, their aggressive style, they saw it as a chance. Exploit loopholes, manipulate the system to their advantage.
And for a while it worked. Huge profits. Buying and selling energy at crazy prices.
Sometimes even creating shortages, just to drive those prices even higher. Controversial tactics for sure, but they were winning. Those Enron traders, they were ruthless, pushing the limits of, what's acceptable.
So was it brilliant business, or was it something darker?
People are still arguing about that. Some say they were just playing the game, taking advantage of the new rules. Others say they were deliberately cheating, committing fraud even.
And there's that quote, the infamous one, Skilling himself.
Which one's that?
Mike, we are a green energy company, but the green stands for money.
Ah, yes. Says it all, doesn't it? Profit above all else. Ethics,
not so much.
Not so much.
But this high-flying act, it couldn't last forever. Enron's house of cards, it all came crashing down. A web of lies, accounting fraud, the whole world was shocked. What were the key factors that led to this spectacular downfall?
We talked about mark-to-market accounting, right? Hid their true financial situation for a while, but eventually the gap between their projections and, reality, it became too big to ignore.
Like they were building this illusion of success.
While the foundation was crumbling.
And it wasn't just one bad bet or a temporary setback. This was a whole web of, what were they called?
Off-balance sheet partnerships, special purpose entities, kept billions of dollars in debt hidden.
It sounds so complicated. How did they get away with it for so long?
Good question. Baffles a lot of experts. It seems like everyone missed it. The auditors, the regulators, the financial analysts, everyone.
So a lot of blame to go around.
It definitely.
But in the end, it was Enron's leadership that created this culture of deception.
Yeah.
Right?
No question. And the consequences, they were devastating. Not just for the shareholders, the employees, but for the whole energy industry. Public trust in corporate America, gone.
Let's rewind a bit, back to that downfall. When did the warning signs start flashing, and how did it unravel so fast?
Early 2000s, some analysts started asking questions. Enron's finances, so opaque, those accounting practices so complex. The stock price was soaring, but the actual earnings, well, no one could really figure them out.
So, red flags but ignored, dismissed.
Pretty much. Enron, they had this aura of invincibility. No one wanted to believe that this giant could be built on, well, sand.
But the truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? What was the turning point?
A few things happened, but a big one was August 2001. Sharon Watkins, vice president at Enron, she sends a memo, anonymous,
To the CEO, Kenneth Lay.
the one and only, warning him about accounting problems, potential fraud.
A whistleblower. Someone trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. But her warnings ignored. Then, boom, the Wall Street Journal, an article comes out. Serious questions about Enron's accounting, those special purpose entities hiding the debt.
And that's when it all started to collapse.
Like dominoes. Investors panicked, stock price plummeted. SEC investigation, Arthur Anderson, their accounting firm, convicted of obstruction of justice, shredding documents.
A complete meltdown in just a few months.
From those first warnings to December 2001, bankruptcy, thousands jobless, billions lost.
Stunning.
A fall from grace, impact on the business world, well, you can't even measure it.
And Skilling, where was he in all of this?
He'd resigned a few months before it hit the fan. Personal reasons, he said. But a lot of people thought he knew it was coming, trying to distance himself.
Jumped ship before it sank.
That's what it looked like. But he insisted he didn't know the extent of the fraud, that others misled him.
But the authorities didn't buy it.
Nope. 2004, indicted. 35 counts. Fraud, conspiracy, insider trading, him and other top executives.
The trial, it was huge, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, one for the history books. Months and months, everyone watching. Would those responsible for Enron actually face consequences?
Let's talk about that trial. What was Skilling's defense, and how did the prosecution build their case?
It was quite a sight. This high-flying CEO facing real prison time.
What was his plan, to fight these charges?
Well, his lawyers, they said he didn't know about the illegal stuff.
Okay.
That he trusted the auditors, the legal team, their advice. Painted him as this brilliant guy, flawed, sure, but a visionary.
But betrayed.
Betrayed by the people he thought he could count on.
So, not a knowing participant, just a victim of circumstance.
Basically. So focus on the big picture, changing the energy world. He missed the shady stuff happening underneath.
But the prosecution, they had a different take on Skilling's role, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. They said he wasn't just some figurehead. He was the brains behind the whole operation.
Okay.
They had evidence, showed he was involved in setting up those off-balance sheet partnerships, the ones hiding the debt.
And that management style, right? That culture of fear, pushing people to the limit.
Exactly. They said that was all Skilling, that he created this environment where, well, ethics didn't really matter, profits at all costs.
So, two very different stories. The naive visionary versus the mastermind.
Yep. And the jury had to decide who to believe.
And what did they decide?
May 2006, after months of it all, testimony, deliberations, guilty on 19 of the 28 counts.
Wow.
Conspiracy, securities fraud, insider trading, the big ones.
That must have been a tough pill to swallow for Skilling.
Oh, yeah, devastating. 24 years and 4 months in prison. Plus, over $45 million in restitution.
That's a lot. Sounds like they didn't buy the whole well-intentioned leader who made a few mistakes argument.
Nope. The judge, he made it clear he thought Skilling knew exactly what he was doing, and that those actions, they hurt a lot of people, employees, investors, public faith in the whole system.
But Skilling, he wasn't done fighting, was he?
No. Appealed right away. Said that honest services law they used, it was too vague, unconstitutional even, and that all the media attention, it meant he couldn't get a fair trial.
And that appeal, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, right?
It did. 2010, they agreed to hear it.
What were the big questions in that case? The things everyone was focused on?
Well, the honest services fraud law, it was a big one. They used it a lot for executives, breaches of duty, even when there wasn't clear proof of personal gain.
So Skilling was saying the law itself was just too broad, open to too much interpretation.
Exactly. And the Supreme Court, they agreed, at least partly. They narrowed it down, said it only applies to bribery, kickbacks, that kind of thing.
So a win for Skilling, even though he is still in prison.
A legal win, for sure. It changed things for other cases, too. But they also upheld the other convictions, the conspiracy and fraud charges. Said there was enough evidence to show he knew what he was doing, that he was part of those schemes to defraud the investors.
So, less time, but still guilty of serious crimes.
14 years, that's what it got reduced to. And he got out in 2019.
So after all that, the rise, the fall, the trial, prison, Where do we land on Jeffrey Skilling? Grifter or gifted? Visionary who lost his way? Or a con man from the beginning?
Tough one. Brilliant, no doubt. Charismatic, could spot an opportunity a mile away, built a great team, and he had a vision, a compelling one, for the future of energy.
But he was also ruthless, right? Ambition that wouldn't quit, didn't care much for ethics.
Manipulated the system for his own gain, that's clear. His story, it's a warning. What happens when ambition goes unchecked, when winning is all that matters?
Could have been a true innovator. But that drive for success, it clouded his judgment, destroyed everything in the end.
The talent was there, the vision too, could have made a real difference. But he chose a different path, and it led to ruin, not just for him, but for so many others.
It reminds us that smarts, charisma, they can be powerful, but also dangerous. You need ethics, a sense of responsibility to balance it out.
Absolutely, and we got to think critically, be skeptical, especially when someone's promising the moon. Seems too good to be true.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Jeffrey Skilling, we'll leave you with a question. How do you spot the real visionaries, the ones who are actually making a difference, from the ones who are just really good at spinning a story? What are the warning signs? How do we avoid getting caught up in the hype? Something to think about, not just in business, but in life in general.
Worth pondering for sure. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant.